Unspoken Issues.
It's Friday Night Fun. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. I am your host, Jesse Starcher, and we are taking a look tonight at the rematch of the century. That is correct. Superman versus Doomsday Part 2. This is a book that dropped in 1994. It's called Superman Doomsday Hunter Prey. To talk about this book tonight is Chris Armstrong. Whose idea was this anyway? This was yours, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had read this one several times, and I saw it pop up a month or two ago on maybe in a Facebook group or something, some discussion about it. I think when we started doing these extended episodes of Unspoken Issues, I had already had the idea of maybe doing this eventually. But yeah, it's a 3-issue miniseries, and it came out at a time, I think it came out during that gap when I was kind of out of comics for about a year and a half, and I caught up to it later. So there was even more build up for me than even when it came out, because by the time I read it, it had been like probably 5 or 6 years since the Death of Superman story had been released. And I really liked it. I've read it probably 7 or 8 times, over the years.
There is a lot that happens in this book. At least it paints a picture of this mysterious, out of nowhere villain that showed up and killed the Man of Steel. So we get a little bit more of a look into the history of Doomsday. And of course, we get our rematch. Hey, we're not alone here, though. Evan Bevins is joining us tonight to talk some Superman Doomsday. Evan, do you have the issues for this, or is this a Hoopla special?
I've got 1 or 2 of the issues. I read it off of Hoopla this time around, but I know I have 1 or 2 of the issues that I think I got in a batch of comics I bought somewhere that somebody gave to me. Busy time of year. You said it was on Hoopla, so I went digital this time around.
That's all right. Was there more to this collection, too, in that was on Hoopla, or is it just this?
Yeah, there's a Doomsday Annual #1 that's labeled with a year 1 on it. So some old Doomsday stories. I didn't get to read through those yet, but I mean, you got Jerry Ordway, Dan Jurgens, Lee Simonson, and Roger Stern writing them. So not a bad lineup there. And then there was Superman, the Doomsday Wars.
It's like the third part of the Doomsday trilogy, sort of. After
Gotcha.
Death of Superman and this, he comes back in Doomsday Wars that Dan Jurgens also, I think, wrote and did the art on. And it's not any good. I didn't like it when it came out, and I reread it. During the pandemic, I got all the trades of Death of Superman, Funeral for a Friend, Reign of Superman, Return of Superman, and then had the last one was a Superman Doomsday trade. And so I read all through those as soon as the pandemic started, when I was actually off work. I think I was off for 2 weeks, and then I was right back to work. Yeah, I reread it then, and I was like, it's not any better than I remember.
I mean, this is the first time I've read this. I mean, when we reach the end of the story, there's no doubt in my mind that should have been it for Doomsday. I mean, my gosh, This is
Jesse,
I don't know
have you read a comic before?
Right.
We'll circle. I want to circle back to Doomsday Wars after we're done talking about this one, and I'll kind of air some of my grievances, I guess.
It is Festivus.
Yep.
It is. Let me talk about the creative team here. So Dan Jurgens on the story and layouts, Brett Breeding with the art, finished art, Bill Oakley on lettering, and Gregory Wright, friend of the show, Gregory Wright on colors, color guides, and then color separations by Android Images. So this dropped April 12th, 1994, this first issue did, and Superman dies in 92? It ain't 92, is it? Or is it 93?
I believe it's 92.
You're right, Chris. It was 92 because I came this close to re-airing my Death of Superman in celebration of the 30th anniversary. That just happened.
That's right. Yep.
So, yeah. 1994, this is hitting the shelves. It's about a year and a half after the death of Superman. Superman's come back. He's trying to get used to being alive again. What was this thing that killed him? So that's kind of where we start here.
He's also got a mullet at this point. You need to make sure.
Oh, yes.
Don't skip that.
Does. All right, here we go. Issue 1 of Superman Doomsday Hunter Prey. It has been mere weeks, according to DC timeline, since Superman returned from the dead after meeting his end in a climactic battle against Doomsday, a fight that apparently killed both combatants. Now, Superman wants to find the body of Doomsday to try to understand his origins. There's only one problem. The evil cyborg Superman tied him to a large rock and launched him into the atmosphere. In deep space, a cargo ship on its way to Darkseid's homeworld, Apocalypse, discovers the asteroid carrying Doomsday. Bringing it on the ship, they soon find that Doomsday is still alive, and he escapes, killing the crew. The spaceship soon lands on Apocalypse, and Doomsday begins brutally killing its inhabitants. We also learned that Cyborg Superman transported his consciousness and body into a compact form and hitched a ride on Doomsday's back. Now, Cyborg Superman aims to become ruler of Apocalypse after Doomsday levels it. However, Darkseid has had enough and squares off with Doomsday, pummeling him with his Omega beams. Inexplicably, climbing from the impact crater, Doomsday attacks Darkseid, knocking him unconscious. Meanwhile, Darkseid's faithful servant, Darkseid, posts a call for help to anyone that can hear. Superman ends up answering that call and arrives on Apocalypse to find Doomsday and Cyborg Superman, two enemies he thought were dead, very much alive. Realizing things are growing direr by the minute, Darkseid opens a boom tube just behind Doomsday, and before Superman can make it there, it sucks Doomsday in and closes up. Now Superman is afraid that he has lost Doomsday forever, and worse yet, Doomsday could be on Earth, continuing his destruction. I mean, I got some talking points here. I mean, what do you guys think Lois and Clark's cat's name is?
I assume it's Streaky.
Okay, help me out here, because has Superman's cat ever showed up before?
I mean, there are super pets, not necessarily the lineup that was shown in the movie this summer, but there's Streaky the super cat, Crypto the super dog, Comet the super horse. Beppo, that's Beppo the super chimp. Small of stature, but prehensile of tail and large of heart. I stole that from Wizard. Sorry.
No one would have known, Evan. You could have taken credit for it.
This is the internet. Somebody would have been like, that guy. I don't know if that's Streaky in that case or not. I mean, if it's Lois's cat, it might be, Woodward or Bernstein or something like that. But
All right. So let's talk.
Throw up a Twitter poll on this.
I will do that.
Are we done with issue 1 now? You want to go ahead straight to issue 2?
Yeah, that's all my notes.
That's all the relevant information from the first issue.
Right. So anybody want to take a stab at explaining to me again what Cyborg Superman did here?
In the Reign of Superman story, Cyborg Superman is the one who strapped Doomsday to the asteroid and left him to float in space. Which it was supposed to be his dead body. People thought he was dead. I don't know if Cyborg thought he was dead or not. Yeah, he's the one that left him to float. So I guess he put a piece of himself on Doomsday's body. So if he was defeated elsewhere, he would have a backup.
So he could just reconstitute himself out of this thing. And I mean,
he's kind of like Tron. If a piece of him survives,
all right,
he can come back. I guess seems to be how it works.
He was mostly Data, and he took over the armor that dude was in that Doomsday killed.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes more sense.
I think he was mostly like Data or Energy. And then because apparently that's a pretty fancy suit of armor if you're not fighting Doomsday. He took that over and remade it in his image, so to speak.
This issue also with Cyborg Superman, he's trying to call himself Cyborg now.
Yeah, I think Victor Stone was not really doing much. And, DC and Marvel never met a name they didn't want to recycle.
That's true.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, why? You can't. Cyborg, I would think, is synonymous with a hero. And now all of a sudden we're just going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, we're just going to start calling this villain Cyborg. I mean, it's not like.
The difference is Hank Henshaw is the Cyborg.
Okay, so he's just with a THE at the beginning.
Well, and I think I'd have to go down to the basement and dig it out, but I think his overpower card said Cyborg Superman.
Okay, so
even after he was no longer masquerading as Superman?
I think so.
Okay.
Evan's coming through with the answer here. What's he got? It's just Cyborg.
Well, that was in overpower, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I wasn't reading a lot of DC then, but I don't know that Victor Stone was front and center at that point, so they may have just been like, yeah, we'll just use this name.
Okay. Good enough for me. All right, next note. This book is brutal. This book is brutal.
These 3 issues have to be, especially the first one, have to be the most violent Superman comics that have probably ever been produced.
Oh, Doomsday's rampage through Apocalypse, where there's one point where he punches a guy and his knuckle claws are like through the back of the guy's head, and he's just holding them there. And I was like, this is what I like. This is what I came to the party for right here. This is beautiful.
Yeah, Liefeld would probably take credit for this as well.
Right.
DC had to get super serious with their action.
Oh man, did they ever. Chris, I think you were like, this is kind of, it's definitely, it's pretty violent. And I was like, oh really? I didn't realize how violent it would be.
Was there any kind of like parental advisory on that, or?
Not that I saw on the front here.
Because it seems a bit much. I mean, like I said, for a Superman comic, when Doomsday is coming back on that cargo ship, I mean, it's almost like a horror movie.
Yeah.
And the one dude gets like cut in half, and I mean, it fits with the story, but and I know, comics haven't been for kids for a while, but at that point, I can imagine somebody going like, "Oh, here's this nice looking Superman book, Junior," and then, "Mom, the guy got ripped in half."
Right.
I was going to say, I'm assuming that because of the prestige format, they may have only been available in comic shops and not like on newsstands. I don't know that for sure because I know some prestige format stuff did make it to newsstands. I'm not sure if these did. So maybe they were counting on comic shop owners to kind of warn people away from younger kids reading. Who knows? But yeah, they didn't have any advisory type labels at that time.
Nothing on the front of this thing at all. This is what this monster was supposed to have been doing. This is what I've wanted to see from this monster that is just going about killing anything that's in its path.
I still question the physics of that one shoulder spike stabbing at the Apocalypse Airport.
I don't blame you, sir. There are.
I mean, it could be that had happened earlier and he's just been stuck there.
That could be.
As Doomsday continues to rampage.
That
makes more sense than no, Phil, don't back up. That's right. The underlings on Apocalypse are named Phil.
The splash pages in this thing are just off the chain. I think that definitely is one of the reasons why they made this a prestige book, because they were going to. The art is not lacking here.
Yeah.
And when they do a splash page, it's beautiful. I mean, one of these pages I think I used for the I just posted on the site is just straight up like Doomsday's face. That's just one page, but it looks beautiful. I definitely think that that's one of the defining factors of this story. Using the splash page. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, each issue is, I think, 48 pages, and it's still a pretty quick read because, for one, there's a lot of action, but also, there's big splash pages, like you said, and even the pages that aren't splash pages, there's a lot of, just huge panels. It's almost like Jurgens was going for, a big summer blockbuster movie feel for this book. A lot of big panels, a lot of big images.
A lot of widescreen stuff, definite blockbuster movie feel. I agree, 100%. All right, my last note here, and I'll turn it over to you there, Chris, because this will just, all I have to do is say 3 words, and that's Doomsday versus Darkseid. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, that was pretty epic. When I had read this, I knew who Darkseid was, but I probably had never read a comic with him even in it at that point, because I didn't read a whole lot of DC when I was younger. But I knew he was one of the big bads in, the DC Comics universe, and Doomsday handled him pretty efficiently.
Yeah. If you didn't know who Darkseid was, they get it across that he feels like he could go out and handle this threat pretty easily. He's like, all right, that's it. I'll go handle it myself.
Yeah. Eventually he's like, well, my army is getting obliterated. I'll deal with it. So.
Doomsday gets hit with the Omega beams from his eyes. I know at this point in my life when I'm reading this, I'm like, somebody is getting messed up. What is Doomsday going to look like when he comes out of this? Because if he survives that hit and he gets up out of there, and you're like, okay, oh my gosh. And yeah, I mean, Darkseid gets leveled and is knocked out, and he is not the winner of this fight. Not the winner at all.
Well, yeah, I'm with you. That's the quickest I've seen Darkseid dealt with. Maybe not quite as embarrassing for Darkseid as that issue of JLA where the Atom takes him out, the Atom and Green Arrow. But it's pretty rough, and that definitely drives home. I mean, maybe even more than the original Doomsday Superman fight. How powerful he is.
True.
I mean, Superman they fought for hours and hours and across several issues, and this is just like, hey, Darkseid, boom.
Yeah.
I do have, between this and the second issue, a few questions about Omega Beam's physics. I think it works like most comic book powers, which is it does whatever the writer needs it to.
Yeah. Every time I see an Omega Beam, it's not like it's a straight shot. He's like curving it around something or going up and down and around. And I'm like, how is he? Okay, maybe his
You watched Wanted a bunch of times.
Sure. Oh man.
But yeah, it seems like a lot of times when I see the Omega Beams, like they don't act like it's supposed to be like the Omega Beams will destroy anything, and it never does.
Yeah, didn't the Omega Beams transport Bruce Wayne through time in that when they thought he died?
Yeah.
At the end of Grant Morrison's run or something?
Yeah, but I actually think that was, I want to say it was something else. It wasn't like the Omega Beam, it was the Omega effect or the Omega technicality or something. I don't know.
The Omega technicality. The Omega MacGuffin.
Yeah, there you go. The Omega plot device.
One thing that I thought was kind of interesting was the way, like, it opens with Clark thinking back to his childhood when he was scared to go in the basement. And they kind of used that throughout the 3 issues as, like, Superman kind of dealing with, like, his fear. Because he knows he can be killed, even though I guess technically he wasn't dead after Doomsday killed him the first time. But he has that fear now. There's like this psychological thing going on with him feeling like a defenseless child. These images that Jurgens does of young Clark, most of them look pretty good. They look like a little kid. But a couple of them remind me, have you seen that meme of the John Burns, and I think it was in his X-Men run, where he draws 2 kids like playing in the bathtub?
I can't say I have. I'm going to have to look this up.
And like,
be very careful what search terms you enter, Jesse.
That's true, yeah. At the top, the text is like, just draw 2 kids. It's easy. You can do this. Just draw 2 kids. It's like supposed to be Burns' inner monologue. And then it's like the result is like basically 2 toddler bodies with like grown men's faces are in the bathtub. That's how especially the issue or the panel where Clark is like running away from the basement door. It just is kind of goofy looking. Maxima shows up when he's trying to find trying to find out where Doomsday is or whatever. Maxima was part of the Death of Superman story, where she was part of that Justice League team that Doomsday ran through easily, and then she helped Superman, continue the fight for a little while before eventually she had to like take some people to the hospital or something. And she offers to like go with Superman, and he's like, no, I've got to deal with this myself. I mean, I guess thematically that makes sense from a writer's standpoint, but like, why in the world would Superman refuse to basically take Wonder Woman with him to deal with it? Which I guess he doesn't know that Doomsday's alive yet, but still.
2 reasons.
Go ahead.
I thought the same thing, but so 2 reasons. 1, maybe he doesn't want to put anybody else in danger because that's a Superman thing to do.
Sure.
And 2, he probably figures Maxima's going to get handsy out in space.
Yeah.
But still, he's like, yeah, I just got back with Lois. I'm not going to take my would-be ex out into space.
Good point. Good.
That might even be the bigger concern. He's like, well, Maxima, you could get hurt, or things could get awkward.
We covered a story. It was one of the big stories that happened right before the death of Superman, and Maxima was a villain in that story.
Oh, really?
He did not trust her at all. If you were just picking this up, I'd be on the same side you were. Like, oh my gosh, bring her along, do something, to where she can, because she is, I think she's very, very powerful. She
seems like a B-level Wonder Woman, sort of, to me. Power levels, anyway.
She has all the powers of an Nissan Maxima. You can cut that one out.
Do not cut that out.
She, I think, was pretty duplicitous in that story. And then Superman's, I don't trust you as far as I can throw you. And I think that's what's going on here. She offers, and he's like, I don't, And
Jurgens, I think, was on the creative team still at that point. So he knows. He might have even created Maxima. I'm not sure.
It's going to bug me. I need to figure out what the name of the story is real quick.
Panic in the Sky, is that what it is?
Yes, that's what it is. Panic in the Sky. Brainiac going, bringing war world, and we're coming to kick your butt, Superman. And he takes up a whole team to go up there. And,
you kind of already mentioned the gory stuff. Like, I love the way Jurgens does. It's always stuck with me. He punches that one soldier and his fist is just stuck inside of his skull.
Yeah, it's just stuck there.
It looks so cool.
It does, man. It's so good. I did want to kind of jump off of your whole, your mention about Superman worried about what's down in the basement. As a kid, Doomsday is a monster, and that's repeated quite a few times throughout this whole thing. Like, Doomsday is just a thoughtless, mindless monster, it seems like, that anybody would be afraid of. You look at him, he's scary. Superman went toe-to-toe with this guy, just like you said. He died. I mean, most people have a fear of death. And this guy, this thing took it to Superman and killed him. So, yeah, he's trying to face his fears in some way in order to get past it. So the only way that he knows to do that, it seems like, is to learn about his fears. Hence why I think a lot of what he's doing here, trying to learn about Doomsday so he can kind of work through that.
At first I was like, it's kind of obvious. Thinking back to when he was a kid, but being scared as a kid, but you got to figure that's probably the last time Superman was afraid of anything.
True.
I mean, once his powers kicked in, what did he have to be afraid of? So it's, at first I thought, it's a little obvious, but I mean, it's really effective and it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. You guys were getting into some of the big thematic stuff. My notes tended to be focus a little more on the minutia. I don't know why the airport scene, at least until everybody started dying horribly, amused me so much. But I never thought about the infrastructure and day-to-day workers on Apocalypse. Usually it's just slave pits and chaos and everything. And I'm like, I didn't know they had minimum wage dudes. The middle class on Apocalypse. And then the stuff where Superman goes looking for the linear men. I don't I started to put, where they say, we can't help you. We can't interfere with the timeline. And he goes, you guys are a real pain. Do me a favor and stay out of my way from now on. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like Superman. Then I realized Dan Jurgens is writing this and he knows more about Superman than I ever will. So if Dan Jurgens said Superman said that, I guess Superman probably would have said that. But I get that he's dealing, with stuff he's never dealt with before, something that he's actually afraid of. But I don't know. It was just weird to hear Superman going heck with you. And he even smarts off to the kid's dad, the one linear man's dad. He's like, yeah, maybe you should teach your kid right from wrong while you still have a chance. I'm like, come on, Superman. It's a bit harsh.
So Waverider and what's the other guy's name?
Ooh.
Matt Ryder. Those are the same guy, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. That Matt Ryder is just a young
first, but yeah.
Gotcha. Also, I like that panel where Waverider gives Superman a hint about Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Ryder has this expression on his face that's a telling look. I see what you did there.
What are you trying to sneak one by me? I don't think so. Time travel was in this, and I didn't really mention it in the synopsis because the whole linear men thing. I mean, Waverider gets involved, but why was he going back to talk to the kid? Just because he was trying to get the Waverider's attention?
Yeah, he didn't know how else to find him.
Okay. Well. Okay, and obviously he knows that Waverider would be able to help him figure out something about Doomsday's past, because Waverider's, he knows.
He's like the Watcher.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. He's like the Watcher. Let's talk panels here. So mine is going to be the dude getting ripped in half as Doomsday is floating away on that asteroid, where he uses his chain or whatever to whip, and he whips the guy right in the gut and just straight in half. This guy's dead. That's mine. So
I also like how they put the sound effect through where he's getting ripped in half.
Oh, no kidding.
It's a really good use of the lettering.
Oh, so bloody. All right, Evan, what do you got there, man?
I like the one where Doomsday's just kind of dragging Darkseid along after he's beaten him.
Yeah.
And Cyborg Superman or Cyborg, whatever he is talking to him hey, we're gonna do this and this, and Doomsday's just I'm gonna go break stuff. But just him Darkseid totally defeated and Doomsday I'm just dragging this thing along for the heck of it. That's not something you see a lot of. I mean,
no,
bad enough to see Darkseid get his clock cleaned like that, but then Darkseid just like an afterthought.
Right. How many books have that happening right there, where Darkseid is just completely unconscious and so left to whoever's got a hold of him? I mean, it's very, very rare if it's happened at all. Yeah, good pick. What do you think, Chris? What do you got?
I'm gonna go more into Jesse's wheelhouse with mine.
Yeah.
I've always cracked up every time I read this, and I get to the soldiers standing around waiting for the ship to be cleared on Apocalypse. Jurgens they're all in this like full body armor, except for their face. But Jurgens made sure to give like one guy like really striking white eyebrows, and another guy has a mustache, so kind of gives them all a different look. But yeah, obviously I'm picking the guy, the panel with the guy's decapitated head flying over.
Poor Apocalypse, Dum Dum Dugan.
Yeah, that's my because I mean it's definitely gory, but like just the expression on the other two guys' faces, like we may be in trouble here,
folks. Let me tell you, you are not going to have a hard time finding a panel or page in this book to pick if you were doing it on your own end. Like anybody else, I'm sure would have picked like one of those big one-pagers that like the Doomsday just ripping into Darkseid's back. That's a great one.
Oh,
but
yeah.
These are all personal picks of ours. And yeah, I'll go with like, I got no problem going with some dude getting dispatched. All right, let's go ahead. We'll get into issue 2 here. Cyborg Superman, now going just by Cyborg, begins to take measures in order to control Apocalypse and make it his war world. Meanwhile, a wounded Darkseid comes to, finding the stranded Superman, and then collapses at Superman's feet. Waverider appears and talks to Superman, giving him a glimpse into the past of Doomsday. Oh boy, here we go. So we see these scientists 250 million years ago experimenting with evolution in order to try to create the ultimate specimen. Their method, continually throwing a baby into a hostile planet, letting it get killed, cloning it, modifying its DNA, and repeating the process until a perfect specimen was able to survive the harsh environment and all the predators of the planet. The result of the completion of this experiment is Doomsday. Doomsday finds his creators and actually kills them for what they have put him through, and at some point made his way off the planet by hitching a ride on a visiting starship to a place called Calaton. There, Doomsday begins destroying that planet until its leaders developed a living weapon of energy named Radiant to try and kill Doomsday. The massive battle finally ended and Doomsday was dead. The Calatons chained Doomsday up and sent him to float in space. At some point, the asteroid fell to Earth millions of years ago, where Doomsday lies dormant underground. Going to the present here, Darkseid wakes up and tells Superman he needs to deal with the Cyborg. Superman finds the Cyborg engaging in a fight. During the battle, Superman restrains the Cyborg so that Darkseid's Omega beams can hit him full on. Another shot with an even more deadly blast appears to vaporize the Cyborg. We soon learn Doomsday is back on Calaton, but has evolved since they last defeated him and will be impervious to any of their attacks. Superman looks to find Doomsday, heads to Calaton, tries to head to Calaton to take him down. There you go. That is issue 2. Evan, we'll start with you, man. What are your notes there, buddy?
The origin is friggin' brutal. Almost too much so, again, for a Superman comic. But I mean, it's got all the hallmarks of like classic horror and sci-fi. The scientists getting punished for their hubris, and definitely a good explanation for how Doomsday got to be the way he is. And of course, there's one more little twist left that we won't find out until next issue. One of the things that jumped out at me, and maybe it's just me not understanding the Omega beams, because again, I thought the whole point of the Omega beams was they killed everything, but you have Superman going back and forth like, maybe I should just let Darkseid die. No, of course I can't do that, because that's Superman. That's one of the things we like about Superman. He always does the right thing. But then he just totally holds Hank Henshaw up like, yep, here, Darkseid zap him. And then when it doesn't work, a few minutes later, Darkseid blasts him to smithereens, and Superman's like, "What? You just killed the guy?" And I'm like, "Didn't you hold him in place for the first shot?" I don't know, but I mean, maybe that's just me not fully understanding it. But that just seemed a little weird to me. Like Superman's like, "I can't let Darkseid die. Wait, why did you kill this guy?" And then in between, here, Darkseid, shoot him with your death beam. It felt a little strange to me. But I mean, the action in there is great. The art, again, that big cinematic scale, like you guys were talking about. Excellent story, but just a few of the details in there have me confused, and maybe that's my DC ignorance showing.
I'd always wondered what the origin of Doomsday was. You know, I'd read Death of Superman. I knew what happened in that, but I didn't read anything past that. And here we finally kind of get this story that's telling us how this thing came to be. And yeah, you're right, Evan. This is definitely brutal. I mean, my goodness, you're watching as these panels unfold and you're seeing this scientist, you know, they got this cute little baby, and then you see it just, whoop, they send it right out there into the, onto the land by itself, to where these things just destroy it immediately and kill it. You're like,
I was wondering why it couldn't have been an adult clone. I don't know if it had to be a baby.
I know. That was really rough. I mean, even now I'm reading this thing and I'm going, jeez, criminy, we're okay. All right. That's the way you want to go. That's the way you want to go.
I will give him credit. Sometimes when you reveal a mystery origin, it takes some of the fun out of it. I mean, not that this was particularly fun, this origin, but I mean, this origin worked.
Exactly.
It's not one of these where it takes all the mystery out of the character and it's like, oh no, actually this was Pete Ross's action figure that he sent into space, or you know. But yeah, so I mean, it was a really well done origin for what it is. It's just what it is horrible.
It is a perfect explanation as to how this thing could actually evolve into what it is. This mindless, hate-filled killing machine that Doomsday is. Well, no wonder. I mean, you watch, it's not like this experiment takes months. There are years that pass. You can see as the scientists continue to grow old, they get older.
Some of them die and get replaced.
Right. Finally, you know, that you get this thing that actually, you know, this baby is able to survive a night, and then it's able to survive another night. And of course it may die, and then they clone it again and do the experiment all over again.
And then shockingly, it's mad.
Shockingly. It's upset.
Who could have seen that coming?
Don't understand why. One of the more, you know, extreme origins I've seen of a super villain.
You know, you guys are right about the brutality that led to Doomsday. I do like, as you mentioned, as they show the progression, Bertrand, the lead scientist, all smooth and young looking at the beginning. He looks like kind of like a gray alien.
Yeah.
And by the end, he's all wrinkled and old. Like you can tell it's been, you know, lifetimes for normal people. But for this alien, he's lived probably decades, if not centuries, as this experiment goes forward. One thing that kind of stands out about this middle issue is it's kind of a lull in the action. Like there is some action with Superman taking on Hank Henshaw, you know, with Darkseid's help. But it's a lot of like expository type stuff, just kind of revealing the origin of Doomsday after all this time. Which is cool and interesting. Like it's just kind of reading it on multiple reads. The second issue is kind of like the lull before you get back to the big action in the third issue.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is a bit of a lull in the action, but you finally get the reveal. I mean, this had to have been one of the big questions of the 90s. Like, where did this thing come from?
Yeah, because in Death of Superman, he basically explodes out of the earth, out of the ground.
Right.
Goes on a rampage, kills Superman, and then his body is thrown into space. Nothing was ever revealed about like where he came from or anything until this.
Well, let's pick a panel then.
I'm going to go with the last one. Maybe it's cheating because it's technically two panels, but where Darkseid and Waverider are like, there's no way you can beat Doomsday. You beat him once, he evolves, and Superman says, I don't care, I'll hunt him down one way or another. This has to stop. And then that last panel is the flashback to Superman, scared about the basement.
Yeah.
So like the juxtaposition there, but also the fact that this is Superman, and he's probably never been this scared or vulnerable, and he's like, but I'm going to do what I have to do. So that's a good summing up of Superman.
Sure.
I'm going to go with the image, the full page splash page of Darkseid taking Cyborg out with the Omega beams, which is basically just a big like explosion. The thing I really appreciate with some of these with Jurgens on some of these panels is like he's showing the scale of like Apocalypse, other but like the characters are like drawn much smaller, but there's still like a lot of detail.
Oh yeah.
And I really like that image of Darkseid, the small image of Darkseid at the bottom, unleashing that giant explosion.
Massive.
There's also, we see a lot of computer coloring, which was kind of in its early days at this point throughout these issues. And It looks kind of dated in some ways, but I still kind of appreciate it. It's kind of like early CGI. Sometimes it looks cheesy now, but I still kind of appreciate it in some movies and stuff. And that's kind of how I feel about like computer effects and computer coloring in like 90s comics.
And when you look at that panel that you're talking, that page, most of everything around that, it looks like it's drawn, but in the middle iris, I don't know if that's iris or whatever that is, but the middle part of that explosion, there's no way that are all dots that somebody drew.
There's like a shading, like a pink shading around that middle. Yeah.
That feels digital to me, and it looks great. I mean, it really does look fantastic. It adds to this explosion that's going on here. That's a good pick. It's a good pick. Okay, so this time I went with an easy one too. This was Doomsday versus Radiant, where Radiant is killing Doomsday, where he is just getting pierced with all these massive like radiant blasts. Look at that. One of Doomsday's first defeats, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about Radiant. He's kind of interesting. I think he only appears in this miniseries. If he appears later, I'm not aware of it. But yeah, like basically he's just pure energy that's like this inbred royal family of this planet has like sacrificed all of their life essence to create him, which is really weird and kind of interesting. But
first appearance, second issue of Doomsday, How to Superman Doomsday.
I think he appears in that annual, maybe in like a flashback, the Doomsday annual. But.
It says he also appeared in Countdown to Final Crisis number 15. Probably just in the background somewhere, I'm guessing.
All right, here we go. Issue 3. After the battle, Darkseid secretly collects the consciousness of the cyborg as he believes it may be useful in the future. Superman, with the aid of the Mother Box, gets a computer-originated suit and weaponry specifically designed to help fight Doomsday. Ready for battle, Superman
and
pouches. Oh yeah, lots of pouches. We got arm pouches. It's just all over the place.
Got a head sleeve.
Yeah. This first time I've ever seen this costume. I cannot remember Superman looking like this in anything I've ever seen. This Mother Box generated costume, which it's not just a costume. I mean, there's Mother Box generated weapons that are going to be happening here. Mother Box kicking in some work here to help Superman defeat Doomsday. So ready for battle, Superman and Waverider head through a boom tube to Calaton. On Calaton, Doomsday is already fighting the Radiant, and this time he's able to win. Superman finds the beaten Radiant, who tells him that Doomsday is headed to attack the planet's power core. Reaching the beast, Superman is planning to attack Doomsday, but knows this time he cannot go blow for blow with him and must use all his abilities and help from the Mother Box. Waverider gets involved and learns that wherever he looks, Doomsday continues to see his creator, keeping Doomsday enraged. Here, Superman learns from Waverider that Doomsday was actually created on Krypton, but soon after this revelation, the Superman-Doomsday rematch begins. As the fight rages, Superman is struggling, suffering a broken arm and being thrown into the planet's power core, causing a massive explosion. Waverider is also caught in this blast and appears to have been dematerialized. Superman barely survives, but is able to get away, finding Waverider's time travel bracelet. Using the Mother Box to guide the time bracelet, Superman is able to take Doomsday to a place where Superman may be able to have an advantage. The end of time. Luckily, Waverider appears, pulling Superman out of there as time ends, swallowing Doomsday in waves of entropy. Waverider brings Superman back home, and Superman thanks him, returning to Lois, feeling good that he has made the universe safer for now. There we go. Issue 3. We had the battle. We had the rematch of the century in this thing. Superman versus Doomsday. Wow. New look for Superman at this point. We got weapons are involved. Superman getting a broken arm. All sorts of stuff was happening in this issue.
Yeah, this is kind of the action-packed conclusion. I love the 90s-tastic Superman costume that they give him with the straps and belts and pouches and the Gambit style head sleeve. They give him a sword for some reason and other weapons.
Don't forget that battery pack.
Battery pack.
Yeah.
You can tell it's the early 90s because there's no wireless technology here.
Yep.
Did he have a gun at one point?
It was an ultrasonic gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like the rematch with the Radiant. We get a couple pages of Doomsday getting his revenge on the energy being. So there's a lot of different, fighting going on. We also get a throwback to Superman's classic burn line, which I think it's probably been overused at this point. This may be the second time he had done this, where I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Alan Moore story, The Man Who Has Everything.
I was just looking it up because I was flipping by that and I'm like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar.
It's a story. I think they even adapted it for the Justice League animated series, but
I think you're right.
Mongol has like tricked Superman into like a fantasy world. I think he's got one of those plants.
Black Mercy.
The Black Mercy.
Yeah, that puts Superman into like a state where he's like dreaming. And anyway, when he comes out and comes to, he's so angry, like he just screams "burn" and uses his heat vision to attack Mongol. This is like a reference to that, and I think they've probably done it like every 2 or 3 years. It probably happens now because comics just want to constantly reference themselves.
Oh yeah,
but
pickles on my burger. Burn.
Yeah. And it's cool to see Doomsday evolving in real time.
Oh, yeah.
We see him do almost like a web shooter style, shooting his bone claws out to attack Superman. And then when Superman uses the ultrasonics, his bones kind of cover up his ears to keep him from getting disoriented by those. So a lot of cool stuff, and a cool ending with Waverider pretty much giving the ultimate, there's no way you can come back from this death to a character. But as Evan said earlier, this is comics, so we know we'll see Doomsday again. But yeah, I really like this finale.
The bone claw thing, they must be flexible in some way, because I mean he's flying. Superman is flying all around, and these things are bending this way and that, and while they're still stuck in his shoulder.
Yeah, they seem to be malleable once he shoots them out and uses them as like fishing line or something.
Yeah. Yeah, harpoon of some sort or something. Yeah, the ending of this book, I mean, you have to think to yourself as you're reading through this. I mean, if you knew that Superman and Doomsday had fought before and both of them had apparently killed each other, what is the rematch going to be like? Who's going to win and who's going to kill the other one? And then you start in issue 1, you're like, okay, well, Doomsday's back. He's up to his shenanigans again. He's killing people left and right. Superman's going to go try and stop him. But then you get to issue 2 and you start to realize, holy cow, this thing is near unstoppable. He was stopped one time, and that was before he got sent to Earth. And then he fought Superman. He's very much, I want to do a Star Trek reference, but he's very much a Borg-like character, where the Borg, you can attack them. There's a ton of them out there, but they adapt to whatever's attacking them. So the next time you attack them, and it's usually within seconds, if you hit them with something, they're going to adapt and be able to fend off that attack and therefore continue on with whatever they were trying to do. That's very much what Doomsday is. How in the world? He's already fought Superman. How is he going to actually adapt? He's going to. How does Superman have a chance here?
Well, Superman is also more powerful than he was. Like once they had the return, I don't remember specifics, but I remember they kind of referenced like he's more powerful than ever now that he's come back. But obviously, even then, not necessarily up to the task.
Right. And the assistance with Mother Box and everything like that, that's great. You know that Superman is in for the fight of his life. He has to adapt to try and figure out how to beat this thing. He ends up defeating it, but he does not kill this thing because he can't. The only thing that can is time. And at the end of this, that is what happens. It's like they have to throw him to the end of time and just be consumed by the end of time. Again, as far as story goes, that feels like that's exactly what should have happened. Like, you can't beat this thing. The only thing that you can do is like throw it into the future and never deal with it again.
I'll nitpick one thing. They're talking about Doomsday's going to this power plant, and if he destroys it, he could wipe out everybody on the planet. And then he kind of does.
Yeah.
And the planet's okay.
Right.
Well, they said he might, so it's like, but if he gets to the climate, to the atmosphere control, then we're really in trouble. That's nitpicking over details. The action's great, and what I really, really like about this is so often when you get a character like Doomsday who comes in, I mean, they make a big deal, and they're going to bring him back eventually. And then you kind of get into the law of diminishing returns. Like, I know, Jesse, you did something on like the first appearance of Carnage a while back.
Right.
And then next was Maximum Carnage, where it was like 14 parts and, every B-level superhero that Spider-Man could find in New York. Carnage had an army and all this stuff. And then I think the next thing I read with Carnage probably wasn't canon, but it was like one of those novels, and it was just Spider-Man taking out Carnage. And then a few years later, Carnage shows up in the background of the prison break in New Avengers, and Sentry rips him in half in space. And he's like, I mean, granted, Sentry's more powerful, but, Carnage went from a huge event to this dude that shows up in the background when we need a villain. I remember reading Doomsday Wars, and I know he's popped up since then, but at least for this one, they did not diminish Doomsday. They ratcheted it up even. I mean, Jurgens kept making references to Superman saying, well, I can't do this. This is what happened last time. So they're explaining the fight isn't lasting longer because they need it to sell a comic. They're explaining in the story that Superman's trying things differently, but Doomsday is more powerful. So they really did a good job of stepping it up instead of just rehashing it, taking Doomsday down a few notches to, put out some more comics. So I thought they did that really well. If you were going to do a sequel, not explaining where Doomsday came from and having the death of Superman be the only Doomsday story would have been effective, but we know comics doesn't work that way. So if you're going to do a sequel, I don't think you could have done it much better than this.
Yeah, it'd be kind of tough to top the fact that this guy killed Superman. And you got to try and write the sequel for that. Like, how do you take it up? How do you surpass what happened in that book? Really, you can't. But what you can do is provide a reason why. And I think that's definitely what this has going for it, is the mysterious nature behind Doomsday's origin that gets revealed. And then we've got to take that, we've got to make it make sense, and then we've got to provide a fight that actually, at least is somewhat worthy of what happened before, and figure out a way for Superman to try and beat him. It's not just Superman that beats this guy. It's Superman, Mother Box, and Waverider have to try and take him out. So,
I mean, really, like, the only other thing you could do would be, I don't know, have Doomsday attack Superman while he's flying Lana Lang's baby across the country. Oh, wait.
Right. What'd you think of the reveal that Doomsday was from Krypton?
I mean, in a way, it makes sense. I mean, we know that Krypton did a lot of genetic engineering and stuff, and it makes sense thematically. I remember thinking when I first read it, it reminded me a little bit of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. The only people who get powers are people with a deep personal connection to Peter Parker. It's like there could have been just like one random dude.
Yeah.
Who got? I mean, I understand it thematically, but it was never like Spider-Man was in conflict with these people because he's a hero and they're a villain. It was, Peter Parker's neighbor's cousin cut me off in traffic, and I have to avenge him now. Oh, he's Spider-Man. Great. That just lets me kill two birds with one stone. To a certain extent, I was like, oh, of course they're tied together. But I mean, it really does work thematically. So.
What is the Doomsday Wars?
That title is a little misleading. It's basically just kind of the third part of the Superman Doomsday conflict, I guess.
Okay.
So Doomsday comes back in that one. And the reason I was excited about that is because, when Doomsday first showed up in Death of Superman, he fought the Justice League. But it was like the B level or maybe even C level Justice League. It was Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, Bloodwind, who was, I guess, really Martian Manhunter, but it wasn't the heavy hitters. In Doomsday Wars, he fights the Justice League. I was like, oh, finally. And it was like the Grant Morrison era Justice League. So it was Wonder Woman, Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, The Flash, Batman, Orion was in that one. But when they actually had Doomsday fight them, you saw almost none of the fight. You kind of saw a little bit of Wonder Woman fighting him, and that was pretty much it. It mostly took place like off panel, and so I was like super disappointed in that. And then, like Evan was referencing earlier, Superman for a lot of the story is trying to transport a baby, Lana Lang's baby, to a hospital. Is it like overseas or something? I can't remember.
Trying to get him out of Smallville. It was the old hospital in Smallville.
Yeah, and there's like a winter storm.
I'm flipping through it now. I have not reread it after that first time.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm probably being too hard on it, but I just remember being really disappointed by the Justice League stuff, being really just underwhelmed, like compared to like Hunter Prey, which I think is really good. But yeah, there's probably some interesting stuff in it. And Dan Jurgens also wrote and did the art on that one, but I didn't like it.
Well, you said misleading title. I was like, oh man, there's going to be like 20 Doomsdays going to be showing up or something. And we just
that happens
deal with all them,
but not in Doomsday Wars.
Okay.
Eventually, it seemed like when other writers started using Doomsday in other stories, they never really knew what to do with him. He was never as effective after those first, kind of like Evan said, it was diminishing returns eventually with Doomsday as well.
Yeah, you can't use him like a regular villain. There's no way. Like, you put this guy away for like 10 years. Right, you can't say that. You put this guy away for like 3 years and then maybe bring him back. And when you bring him back, it's got to be another event. I mean, that's the only way that you make him feel like he matters.
Yeah, it should be something special.
Right. It's got to be something that is as huge. He's the big villain reveal. Somebody's brought Doomsday back. We've been fighting so-and-so this whole time. And no, now we got to deal with Doomsday. We got a satisfying end to the arc of Superman conquering the fear of the imaginary monster. Mm-hmm. We did get that like towards the end of this book. I think not enough blood and guts there, though. Okay. All right. Well, whose turn is it to go first here?
Go ahead, Evan.
Okay. Evan, you get to go first with your pick your panel.
I picked Super Mega Extreme 90s Superman going through the boom tube with Waverider. It's the one. It's on the page that has him flying over like the fire pits on Apocalypse. Yeah, and Waverider says, "I'm coming along." And he says, "Well, as long as you're going to help, last thing I need is someone following just to watch me die again." Good line too.
I'll go ahead and pick mine. Get back to my notes. Mine was Doomsday holding Superman up like Bane did with Batman. I thought there was going to be a back break going on here or something. We already had an arm break. I thought he was going to like just bring him down across his knee or something crazy like that. Well, it would not be pleasant for Superman if he did that, though, because number one, Doomsday has these things. He's got spikes on every like joint, bone spikes coming out, and including the knees. It would have been bad news for Superman at that point. He would have been impaled. There's a part in this book, if I remember right, where Doomsday finally recognizes, I think, who Superman is, and he says the word Metropolis, and Superman's like, "You can speak." You're like, oh man, this is.
I thought he said Metropolis back in the old the original.
Did he?
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
He says it because he sees a wrestling ad on a TV with like a Hulk Hogan looking character talking about Metropolis.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, in fairness to Superman, he did get hit in the head a bunch of times and died and came back. So it's cool if his memory is a little fuzzy.
He gets hit with that sword too at one point. I'm looking at that panel. I just scrolled up a little bit where Superman hits him with that sword, and Doomsday is like made of clay or something. And it's almost like he just
he has no internal organs to be wounded. He survives on solar energy.
Crazy stuff. What do you got there, Chris?
The panel I picked was Doomsday delivering what would be the killing blow to the Radiant, jumping through him. You see like the kind of like some Kirby crackle going all around Doomsday as he's able to like disrupt the Radiant's energy and kill him.
And yet another, that was one of my notes here, was like, we get some people getting torn in half.
Yeah.
In these 3 books, and I think that's what happens to him, doesn't it? I mean, he like goes right through him.
He becomes basically like a ghost, like apparition for a while before he dissipates completely.
And has a sick looking Doomsday too. Like all you see it's just completely like blacked out, except for his teeth and his eyes, and obviously the outline. That's a good one, man. I like it. All right, we did it. Superman Doomsday, Hunter Prey. Let me ask you this: who would you recommend this to?
Probably people who heard about the death of Superman, but I don't know, that are right in that sweet spot of maybe they didn't read it regularly, but they're interested enough in comics to find out more. Like, hey, that wasn't the end.
Let's get into plugs. Thanks, first off, for joining me this evening. It's getting close to Christmas. I don't know when I think this is going to air in about a week or so. So these two guys join me tonight here a couple days outside of Christmas to get this comic book in and discuss it. Can't tell them enough how much I appreciate that. Let's go ahead. We'll get into plugs here first. Chris Armstrong. I'm rolling around Marietta today. It's, I'm trying not to slide off the side of the road. Meanwhile, I'm listening to Shane Black Christmas Time on the old Because Movies. So why don't you tell everybody where they can find that and what's been going on with you there, buddy?
Well, I appreciate you listening. That's I've got a movie podcast I do with my buddy AJ. It's called Small Screeners, where we usually talk about direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. We've also started kind of a sister podcast to that called Because Movies, where for Halloween, we did a series on the original slashers from the 70s and 80s and their modern-day remakes. And then for December here, we've been doing a Shane Black Christmas series. So that's what's been going on over there. That's all in the Small Screeners feed. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at RoadieMan34, so you can check me out there. And Small Screeners also has Instagram and Twitter feeds at Small Screeners.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I think you guys was talking Kiss Kiss Bang Bang on this latest episode, right?
We did Lethal Weapon, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and we've got Iron Man 3. I think that's going to drop tomorrow if I can get it in time.
Oh man, was The Long Kiss Goodnight? Was that Shane Black?
He was the screenwriter. Yeah, he wrote Lethal Weapon, and he wrote Long Kiss Goodnight, and then he directed wrote and directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Iron Man 3.
Yeah, I remember that. I didn't connect with that. I think The Long Kiss Goodnight was my first published movie review.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, well, in the Beaver Voice, the high school newspaper.
Nice. Did it get a good rating?
Yeah, I think so. I enjoyed it. I mean, anytime you got Samuel L. Jackson spitting out lines like that,
yeah,
it's a good time.
All right, Evan Bevins, asterisk 51. Defenders all the time, all day long over there. Secret Defenders, by the way.
Secret Defenders.
Don't tell anybody. Tell them all about it, Evan. Where can they find you, buddy?
Asterisk51.blogspot.com. Kind of fell off on the Christmas content this year, although you can still go back and read my ode to Marvel 2-in-1 number 8, where the Thing and Ghost Rider save Christmas. It's a beautiful, beautiful story by our buddy Steve Gerber. I'm rapidly coming to the end of my read-through of Secret Defenders, and so probably going to be starting up soon a look back at Just Imagine Stan Lee creating the DC Universe. I give Ravage 2099 the respect you guys won't. And you may find a review of whatever I dug out of the movie bin at Dollar Tree occasionally. And, let's see, we're getting back to the Super Bowl, so I'm going to have to soon. So I'll have to throw in some more football content on there. Maybe go back to the NFL Super Pro or Kickers Inc.
Kickers Inc.
So you never know, but yeah, we're working my way through Secret Defenders, and then gonna find some new obscure series to explore.
All right, I like it. I can tell you that Evan and I, by the time this airs, I think Evan and I will have a couple episodes, actually. I've split it up into two. I didn't tell you this, Evan, but I've split it up into two. We did a discussion for the Source Material Comics podcast on what I titled A Trilogy of Tumultuous Stan Lee Tales, I think is what I decided to call it.
There you go.
There we go. So Stan Lee wrote 3 tales that Evan and I are discussing in order to celebrate the 100th birthday of Stan Lee, and also the Super Blog team up, provided anybody else is going to provide any content for that.
I think the Super Blog team up event got pushed back a little, but some people are still going to put stuff out for his 100th birthday. I mean, okay. It's not like there's a shortage of Stan Lee content, and it's not like there's a bad time to appreciate Stan Lee. So.
Right. So
I will probably, at the very least, repost the issue of my post on the issue of Ravage that was written by Stan Lee and featured a cameo by Stan Lee.
We talked Fantastic Four number 12, X-Men number 9, and Spider-Man, one story out of the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2, where Spider-Man meets Doctor Strange. So you can check that out. That should be airing, I think, the week prior to when this is, planning to air that the 28th. And then on the 29th, Evan and I continue our Stan Lee discussion where we talk about our top 5 Stan Lee cameos. And they aren't all movies, folks. So tune in to check that out.
They are all in the MCU.
No, they are not. They are not. And also, we get into a little bit of a Marvel Snap discussion at the end of that episode. So if you play the Marvel Snap mobile game, you can hear Evan and I's thoughts on it, even though it's probably pretty dated now. Like, I think we were that was before what's been happening in Marvel Snap. Even new seasons, I think, hit. We probably aren't griping about the leader as much in there. At least I'm not, anyway.
I don't gripe about the leader. I love the leader.
I hate the leader.
Not a leader.
I love the leader. The leader is perfect.
Na 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 leader. Na 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 leader.
Na 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 leader. Na 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 leader. Leader. Batman.
I mean, leader.
I'm so woefully inept when it comes to Simpsons references. Like, I suck at them. Like, I can maybe get one or two. I didn't get that one. That's for sure.
I didn't either. Don't feel bad.
But hey, he gave me the link, so guess what? It's going into the podcast.
It's a perfectly cromulent mistake to make.
Oh, now see, that was a Simpsons reference, wasn't it?
Yes.
I'm getting out of here. Yeah, for myself, hey, listen, you're listed to this episode on the Source Material Comics feed, most likely, so you can go out there, you can check out other issues. Not other issues, but other Unspoken issues, episodes. Me and Chris got together a long time ago, started this podcast. We've had a ton of episodes in the can, on the feed. We're reaching over 70 episodes.
We don't even know where you record.
I am currently on the toilet. Then we also have the Source Material Comics podcast, which I just plugged one for that. So y'all can check that out. All sorts of comics content being discussed right here on this feed. So with that being said, that is Evan Bevins. Over there is Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Getting out of here. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics blogs and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com and the Rattleitch Broadcasting Network, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.